Coming to you live from deep within an icy, radioactive wasteland, we are the survivors of the social justice zombie apocalypse. The few, the brave, the bitchy, once more wading into battle against the zombie herds with Rantzerker 52. Shitlord redeemed. And just so you know, yes, indeed, there is still ice and snow outside my window. People were asking me, so when does it get to be spring? Well, it's not spring yet.
Seriously? It's been like, it was 22 degrees yesterday. It's going to be like 24 today here. It's like nice, almost like summer here.
Yeah, I know you're rubbing it in, but
yeah, that's Celsius, people. Celsius, not Fahrenheit.
Yeah, no, I mean it's getting to be spring. Like the snow, there's still it's patches of snow, so it's mostly snow and mud where I am.
It wasn't even unpleasant in London today, so yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well,
it's all coming up, Mike.
Yeah.
No, I just actually today, just this morning, I took my old pair of jeans and I cut them off because I needed shorts.
Okay. Well, thank you for the update, Karen.
I'm rubbing your face in it. I needed shorts. Needed them.
Yeah, well, I don't quite need shorts yet. So, there you go. But the cats are starting to bug us more about going outside. So we get to celebrate spring with deep annoyance. And also they're starting to wake me up at like 5:30.
Oh yeah, no, we're actually almost in magpie season, and then they'll be sitting on a branch outside my bedroom window going reet 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 reet.
Yeah, my cat Pook, the really big one, he killed a bunch of blue jay chicks 5 years ago, and they still remember him.
Oh yeah, they will.
Every time he goes out, squawk 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 squawk. It's like, Jesus.
You killed my brother, you bastard.
Yeah, you killed my father. Now prepare.
I'm looking for the cat who shot my paw.
Okay, all right. So let's so before we get into it, I wanted to thank all of you listening, because you have successfully funded our She for He event at the Simon Fraser Men and Boys Advocacy Society. So we will be going to that in Vancouver. It's going to be the 23rd at the Simon Fraser University. I'm not sure which campus. I'm led to believe that there is more than one.
Downtown.
Downtown campus.
It'll
all right.
be downtown because downtown is a nightmare, and the other one is really easy to get to, and so they'll of course make us go to the downtown one.
Well, we don't know that for sure, but
I know for sure. I know for sure it'll be downtown.
How do you know for sure?
Because that's the way they always do it.
All right. Well, wherever it is, it'll be on the Simon Fraser Advocacy for Men and Boys Facebook group. So if you look and go on Facebook and look up that, you'll be able to find the relevant details, and hopefully we'll see you there if you want to come. That is. And thank you again for being so generous as to fund that thing that we were doing, which is the She for He event. All right.
I do also want to say it's hell to get to if you're driving. It's easy to get to if you're taking the SkyTrain.
Oh, okay. So just take the SkyTrain then. All right. Well, with that out of the way, I would like to discuss, because me and Mike, we uploaded something yesterday that referred to an interesting finding about the sexuality of women, that they get turned on by, apparently, according to this, which is the New York Times. So, Jesus Christ, like if there ever was a time that I respected newspapers, it has long since died and been pissed on. But anyways, this is from the New York Times News and Politics section. I think it's quite old by now. I'm not sure when it was. It doesn't give a date. Look at this endless bullshit, like clickbait bullshit underneath it. They replaced all the comment sections with all this clickbait bullshit. But anyway.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
What's wrong? What's wrong?
You're all getting all weird.
Uh-oh.
Sound fine to me.
Oh, okay, then we'll just continue. So anyway, the title, it's you, Karen. Just mute.
Yeah, that might be you.
No, I was unmute. I was muted when it started going weird.
Okay, well, then Mike mute, whatever. Okay, so this thing, can you guys see it? Can you see what I'm showing you?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me just select myself so it doesn't...
It's got a picture of a DJ who looks remarkably like a stereotypical MRA.
Yeah.
I think they just laid the fucking stereotype of the fucking early noughties
That's a woman.
London faux gangster musician
That's
template that all got very embarrassed about them. It's just, let's pretend MRAs with these people.
that's a woman though. That's a woman.
Yeah, it still looks like an MRA.
No, it's not. It's possible that she could be also an MRA, but they're not going to recognize that there are female MRAs. So whatever. Okay, so new documentary finds women turned on by pretty much anything except dudes. That's something you should shout from the hills. Findings show that some train wreck women are aroused by images of scruffy lesbians spinning records. I guess that's just a joke on the image, because everything has to be so edgy. All right. Quoting now, it's not really news that the naked male body is kind of hideous. Guys, why do you think we're always asking you to turn the lights off during sex? Hint, it actually has nothing to do with our being embarrassed about our love handles. But now there's a study to back up this anecdotal evidence. I thought it was a documentary. God, New York Times, you really suck. Dr. Meredith Shivers, a research fellow at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health at the University of Toronto. Oh boy, University of Toronto. Wow, that should give her words an air of authenticity and authority. Explores the fact that women aren't turned on by the naked male form in her new documentary. By the way, kind of cute, but we would have gone with Buy Hard or Live and Let Buy. For heterosexual women, looking at a naked man walking on the beach is about as excited as looking at landscapes, she says in today's New York Times. The article continues. Heterosexual women, Dr. Shives and her colleagues found, were no more excited by athletic men doing yoga or tossing stones into the ocean than they were by the control footage, long pans of the snow-capped Himalayas, which explains why you rarely hear about women climbing on top of Everest. What was surprising, however, which explains why you rarely hear about women climbing on top of Everest? What are you saying, that male mountain climbers are aroused by mountains?
Never mind. It's
You saw that Pixar short, didn't you? Volcanoes are hot.
Okay, all right. What's surprising, however, was that women were aroused by almost everything else, particularly naked women. When straight women viewed a video of a naked woman doing calisthenics, on the other hand, their blood flow increased significantly. They were also turned on by videos of masturbation, graphic videos of couples making love, and footage of bonobo chimps mating. What the fuck, women? So fellas, the next time your woman is closing her eyes while you're getting busy in bed, know that it's entirely possible she's fantasizing about chimp sex in order to bring it home. How are they hanging now? Noel Hancock. This is a real, this is sort of a brave angle to take this finding at, that women regard chimp sex as being more erotic than a naked man. Because, that doesn't say much for women.
No. What women find arousing is anything that actually is overtly sexual. And there's nothing sexual about a male body with a flaccid penis doing something mundane, right?
Okay.
The female body, because arousal is concealed, is always potentially aroused. It's always potentially sexual.
Well, okay, but having said that, the findings are that men tend to be attracted to, well, what you would expect them to be attracted to. So
not attracted to, aroused by. Physically.
Physically aroused by what you would expect them to be physically aroused by. So if you're a straight man, you're physically aroused by a woman, gay men by men, and bisexual men by both.
But this article doesn't get into some of the more interesting nuggets of Chivers' research, which is that because she was measuring arousal in two different ways. One was through measuring blood flow into the genitals, and so genital arousal, and the other was measuring people's stated what they said was they found arousing. And she found no disconnect between what a gay man said he found arousing and what got his dick hard. Same with straight men, like there was just, the brain said one thing, the body said the same thing. With women, it was completely different. And they've done some other stuff as far as with fMRIs and stuff like that. And it's not that there are inhibitions in men as to, like, I'm aroused by that, mentally, but I don't want to say it, or whatever. There is no inhibition at play here. It really is that women are aroused by anything that is overtly sexual, including chimpanzees mating, whereas men are aroused only by the object of their desire, right?
So they're measuring the inhibitions then?
No.
Is that...
They tried to measure those to see if men were inhibited in some way, and that's why, and that, to find out if that was why they did not find chimpanzees mating to be arousing the way women did. And they found that it wasn't an inhibition, it's just a functional difference in the way arousal happens in the brains of men and women, and this sort of disconnect between women's consciousness of arousal, or their brain being an erogenous zone versus their genitals being an erogenous zone. That's not a direct connection, right? So all of this arousal, all of this stuff that women found arousing that you wouldn't expect, it was only their genitals that found it arousing, right? And their brains were, or their, I guess they were saying, I don't find that doesn't turn me on, right? But physiologically in their genitals, it was producing an arousal response. So there you go.
That is weird as hell.
Yeah, no, but I mean, like, it just goes to show, right? Women don't know what the fuck they want. Right? They don't know what the fuck gets them off, right?
Well,
and I can guarantee you, like, women have said to me, and women that I've been with have said to me, I want something gentle, I want something, I'm really not turned on by spanking or roughness or whatever, and then I fucking get rough with them, and then they're like, oh my god, that was amazing. Like, they just don't fucking know. They don't even know what they want.
Well, it's interesting, because if you take it another angle on this, if you drag up some Freud, maybe what's going on is there's no compulsion for women to connect their genital urges with those higher mental faculties that, theory of mind. Because I think pretty much what's happening with men is that they're, for the most part, turned on by the idea of being desired by what they desire. So there's a theory of mind aspect to it. Whereas women are just turned on by stimulus response, like some sort of basic amoeba.
I think it might actually have something to do with the reason why there's some amygdaloid function in male sexual arousal and motivation, and there is not in women, is because men are proceptive. Right? Men are the ones who, like, historically, because they're the ones who have to make the effort, right? And women have always tended to sort of kind of put out a broadcast and wait for men to pick up on the signal and come to her, and then she, selects the best one or whatever, right? And you see this played out in nightclubs all the time. The woman puts on the sexy outfit and she makes herself very appealing, but it's the man who has to approach and make his sort of intentions clear, right? He's the one taking all the risks, right? And so there has to be a more direct line between what gets my dick hard and what I want than there is with women whose sexual proceptivity is much more passive and much more like putting out a broadcast. And yeah, but there's also some speculation that because rape of women in the past would have been a major source of injury, infection, possibly death, right? That lubricating at any sign of sex might happen at some point in this situation, right? Is a physiological defense mechanism to prevent injury.
Yeah, but
so see anything that looks like it might fuck anything, like something goes off just in case.
Yeah.
Basically.
Like, I guess we were raped quite a bit by chimps or something. All right. Well, I'm sort of skeptical of that one because rape doesn't. I mean, remember the study that found that rape actually doesn't show much. You can't really tell the difference between rape
Yeah,
and.
because women lubricate.
Yeah, I know, but you can't really tell the difference. All right.
Yeah, because women lubricate during rape.
Okay, fair enough. But still, I just find this.
Yeah, no, it's completely like you're right that like women's sexuality is really fucking weird.
Yeah, but the other thing is that I find it rather remarkable that she's sort of like the woman who wrote this is putting it back on men. It's like, ah, ha, ha, I'd rather imagine chimps fucking. Doesn't that make you feel bad, man?
I know.
What
It
the
was
hell?
the fucking article missed the entire point of the research, and there's a much better article. I could find it, and we could put it in a low bar. That actually sort of went into the research of Chires, and there were a couple other individuals, a couple other researchers who had also done research, and one of them was that sort of study that I mentioned. I mistakenly, although I know I had seen her on a documentary describing, how women behave in strip clubs, what they look at versus what men look at, and when it comes to in the study that she was discussing in this particular article, which was a very long article, it was a very good one. She essentially said when men and women watch heterosexual porn, the man is generally watching, splitting his time evenly between the woman's face and the woman's body. So he's watching what's being done to her, and he's watching her reaction to that. And he really, really wants to see how she's reacting to it, that she's enjoying it, and the whole bit. Whereas the women who are watching heterosexual porn, they're not looking at the man, and they're not looking at the woman's face. They're looking at her body.
Okay, well, let me just get my social or psychological perspective in on there, and I think I might have got it for like 2 seconds, but maybe this has something to do with the development, the psychological development of women, and I'm going to pull on from some studies onto women's moral development and the finding that women don't develop morally beyond a certain stage, and if that's upsetting to anybody listening, then take it up with the science. There's a particular stage of morality, relational morality, where something is good because it makes somebody feel good, and then there's another stage of morality in which you understand that laws exist for a reason and it's for the greater good. And even if you're in a situation where you can potentially benefit someone and make their lives better, if it violates a law that will eventually degrade all of society, then you don't do it, or you think very carefully about it, whether or not you should violate that law. And women sort of inevitably fail that test, so they don't have a moral imagination to the same degree as men. And I think part of that reason is probably not necessarily innate ability. It may also be the fact that women aren't invited as much by our society to develop that kind of greater moral understanding.
It could also be just that women cease developing, like their brains, they mature earlier. They reach maturity earlier than men do. And, feminists would be like, ha ha ha, so we're adults before men are, and men take so long, they're so immature, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
they don't understand the biological law that the faster you mature, the less intelligent you are.
Yeah, or the less developed you become. And that they don't quite get that, it's really not something to be proud of. One thing that I did want to mention too, in sort of in terms of this sort of moral maturity thing. I mean, like there was a puppy we all are aware of, who was it, Milgram, his experiment with the shocking the person and all of that, right? They fairly recently did one with a puppy. Right, and they were trying to train it to not bark or something like that, or and they had a bunch of men and women go in, and all of the women hit the button until the puppy was dead, and several men, a lot of men, but several men refused. They stopped in the middle. They said, no, not going to do it. There were some men who continued, and the puppy died, or they believed the puppy died, but they're the only people in this experiment that put their foot down and said, I'm not going to do this anymore. That they were all men.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I mean, there's some more stuff that I'd like to bring up. I want to finish my point, and I appreciate your input because it made me think of another thing. But I want to finish my point first. So this idea that women's moral capacity is sort of, and if you're upset, if you're listening to this and you're upset with that, then take it up with the science. But it's sort of stunted beneath men, so men can understand how systems work and how to the greatest benefit for the greatest amount of people, whereas women have trouble with that. And like I said, I don't know if it's necessarily an innate trait or the fact that women aren't encouraged to develop that kind of moral thinking in our society, which suggests to me that there may be other aspects of sort of an adult theory of mind that they are also not invited to develop. So maybe what we're seeing, to take a page from Freud, is the fact that girls never develop beyond this sort of polymorphous infant sexuality, almost like just attracted to everything, and then they don't tie that with an adult theory of mind in which they start to desire that group of people, desire the desire of the group of people that they find desirable. It's a little bit recursive, but they don't end up tying their genital sexuality to their theory of mind. And I wonder, does that mean most women don't have a theory of mind? I mean, that's really rude, but
I don't. They have to. They have to because they're such good manipulators.
Yeah, that's true.
They're so much better at manipulating than men tend to be on average.
Well, yeah, that's very true. Or maybe their theory of mind is tied up more into social. The provision of social resources rather than desiring than their sexuality. Maybe they've just appropriated those mental resources to a particular end.
Yeah, I think that could be exactly what it is.
And I don't like this stuff. I can tell that people are cringing, and it's like, no, you take a good hard look, and you ask yourself, okay, this might be a physical limitation. I don't think it is a physical limitation because otherwise, how would me or Karen or Hannah or Anna exist, or any of the other women who are actually thinking in terms of an overall society and how to develop one that benefits and understand the systems of morals and how you can't always just give people what they want. So it is possible for women to attain that level of moral logic. So my personal opinion is I think that we are stunting women by not expecting them to understand and appreciate the theory of mind and the emotions and the feelings of men, because that is the primary place where you would develop a theory. That's the primary place where women would develop a theory of mind, is around men, because men are different. So we have to do some cogitation and expand those neurons.
Yeah, that's true, and I also think that it really is over the last, and I think that men too have been falling behind in this sort of the moral reasoning regarding systems and sort of feedback loops and cause and effect and things like that. I mean, like every single time I get into it with, and sometimes with men who are, very, very socialist, right? They're very, 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 very to the left. And I essentially present, and I do this with libertarians too, I present, okay, well, but your system, there are some drawbacks, and the drawbacks are built in. They're not bugs, they're features, right? You're going to demotivate people, right? You're going to make people shrug their shoulders and say, well, why would I be more productive than I need to be? And therefore provide the excess productivity that needs to be handed to people who cannot be productive, right? When you take too much of their productivity away from their own ownership and hand it to other people, right? They have no incentive to keep to work hard to keep being productive as they can. When you take the reward away from fathers, that this is your house, these are your children, this is your family, right? If you can take that away from him at any time and take away all of his labor, right, and hand it to, as if he was still married to his wife, and as if he was still a father, hand it to his kids that he's no longer allowed to see. Like, how you have to reward people when they go above and beyond and take responsibility for other people, right? And forcing men to take that responsibility, or not even take it, forcing it out of them, forcibly extracting it from them, that's not going to provide any incentive for men to perform and be productive and do all of the things that we depend on them to do, which is, women are by default less productive over their lives in terms of economics because they have children, because they are laid up having children, right? And so, like, when you when you change the incentives and disincentives, right, you change human behavior. You absolutely do. And me drawing attention to that isn't me saying capitalism is the perfect system. No, it's just saying there is no perfect system, and have you thought of this, and have you thought of that, and, like, how are you going to account for that? You can't.
Yeah, and just to bring it back to the previous, and I appreciate your insight there. Just want to bring it back to the previous discussion about morality. Someone in the chat was saying, "Oh my God, you're so horrible," and I guess, yeah, so what? I am horrible, but I like to look at reality as it is. And the thing is that let's use a different situation. And maybe you'll understand why I don't think this is an implication of women. Let's imagine, instead of never explaining to women that they have to take responsibility for men's emotions, men's concerns. I mean, there should be a give and take, so both genders should. And through that process by saying to girls, no, you don't hit boys. No, you have to be kind. You have to do this, and you have to extend yourself out to understand the male point of view. That process, that is giving girls training to understand these higher levels of thinking and theory of mind. Now, let's use an analogy. Let's imagine we lived in a society where girls were just carried wherever by men. So anytime a girl wanted to go somewhere, a man had to carry her, or a boy had to carry her. Is it the girl's fault necessarily that they aren't able to walk? No, they aren't forced to do it, so they don't. And women aren't forced to actually develop these higher forms of morality, so they don't. The only way to force them to develop those higher forms of morality is for them to start caring about the theory of mind, the mental realm that men inhabit. Because men are the counter. They are the other half of humanity, as it were. I mean, if you can imagine, maybe let's just, for the sake of argument, say there are different species. If we compel women to actually consider the point of view of another species, they are going to develop a higher understanding of compassion, of morality, of how things affect people. Because through the very act of being compelled or being told or trained or encouraged to understand the point of view of people who are not like them. And they're going to develop a greater and richer moral understanding, like men do.
Instead of actually having this whole cadre of feminists essentially saying we understand what men think and feel and why they behave the way they do better than men do, we know all of the answers, and we're just going to essentially say it's because they're a bunch of horrible, rapey, oppressive bastards.
And in the meantime, we're going to invent 1,000 new genders. We're going to invent a new one every day, and we're going to hope to replace men with those thousands of different genders we've invented. That's not quite what we had in mind when we said understanding men.
Yeah. Oh, God. Okay, we got to move on. It's already been half an hour. We have, like, a gigantic fucking article to get through. And
I don't think it will be that bad, though, because usually with articles you get a full, it takes a paragraph, and they create one concept per paragraph, so you can read out a paragraph and then reply to that concept, and so hopefully it won't take as long.
We don't have to banana this time.
No, we don't.
Have to get your potassium somewhere else, folks.
Yeah, no fruit salad today. All right.
Amazing Atheist, you might as well just click the little X now. No bananas.
Okay, Mike, are you ready?
Did you?
Yes, I did. But I might have.
Me. Okay. Yeah,
Yes, it's you. It's your turn.
I'm doing it for the first time, folks. Hang on.
Yeah, we'll give you some. We won't shout at you. I'll just give you the time you need. All right. Are you
Okay.
sharing it? Okay, everyone. All right, there we go. Okay, I can see it.
All right, are we ready to play?
Yes, I think so. Just let me double check that everybody else is seeing it.
Yeah,
Are
I'm
we all seeing this?
so.
Okay. Let's do it. Wait. Just a sec. I need to. Yeah, I've got you selected. Go ahead.
All right.
Whenever you're ready, sir.
We're in mid-beginning thing. Okay, I hope you can hear this as well.
I was a men's rights activist. One man's journey from misogyny to feminism. I discovered the men's rights movement when I was 22. Working at a bookstore in downtown Kelowna, British Columbia. I was trying to earn some money before starting my second year at university. I was in the self-help section, facing our most popular books, arranging...
He put it in quote marks. I don't know why I put facing in quote marks. Is that a bookshop?
What was he masturbating? Like,
Oh no.
No, he wasn't facing them as in turned to face them. He was turning the covers out. He was facing them. That's what it's a store terminology lingo.
I did wonder.
okay, well, apologies for anybody who works in a bookstore if you felt mocked by that.
so their covers and not their spines faced outward. When I noticed the title, Spreading Misandry, the Teaching of Contempt for Men in Popular Culture.
The evil of books, ladies and gentlemen.
I had never even seen the word misandry before, but I was able to deduce its meaning immediately. If misogyny is hatred of women, then misandry must be hatred of men.
Brilliant. You're a genius.
I know. It's so awesome.
Oh, it's a bit.
Oh, by the way, we got a complaint that the video is too quiet, so maybe you ratchet it up a bit.
Right, how's it?
Well, that's kind of edgy and countercultural, I thought. I'd never seen anything that said, I, a white heterosexual male, was actually the one being discriminated against.
Oh my God! What the? No. White and heterosexual have nothing to do with it. It's about men. It's misandry. Misandry. There's just no like white heterosexual in there. Just men.
Yeah. You started this by loading it up there, friend, and we caught that.
He does go on later to say something about how white straight men are the only people left you're allowed to make fun of, and it's more than make fun of, friend. That's sort of the point. But yeah.
All right.
Art was a white guy in a business suit being strangled by his necktie.
Yeah, he's talking about the cover of the book there.
I was in that strange, formative period when you're trying to find your adult identity, flirting with contrarian worldview, so I thought, what the hell, I'll read this. I bought it, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, you see what I did there? Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, no, wait. Can we respond to it as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stop.
Okay. All right. So he only had an interest in men's rights because he was forming his identity. Seriously. Like you didn't, like me. I took an interest, or I was given it my book on Princess of the Window when I was 16, and I found it interesting because the concepts seemed consistent, logically consistent. It was an interesting point of view. Like it was nothing to do with forming my identity. It's interesting how you would frame it in such a manner that it's about forming your identity.
Yeah, no, I don't understand that either. Like the whole, like when I stumbled on the spearhead, I found the points of view there really interesting. I looked into the research that they provided. I found that a lot of what they said was really spot on. I had lots and lots of discussions in the comments sections, and the guys there were, they treated me like they treated each other. Like there was no special treatment for me. They weren't any more mean to me than they were to each other, or any nicer to me than they were to each other. They looked at me like somebody who was capable of understanding them and their point of view, which I think they found surprising. Given the wave of feminists that I came in onto the site with, and then I stuck around. They all just fucked off after they'd like shit up the place, and then they fucking left, and I stuck around and did some reading, and like I just found that it was an interesting it was an interesting set of points of view that really never get discussed, and I found the whole thing just fascinating.
Well, what I find fascinating about this is, again, he seems to be searching for an identity, rather than just being interested in a rational body of knowledge, which I guess explains sort of what happens next. So why don't you take it away, Mike?
Yeah, a lot of people looking for an identity don't do well with the men's rights movement. Because we get bombarded a lot by all the other movements that do very well with finding identities. Anyway, yes. Sorry, there's 3 different things to do before.
At times, so I'd never thought about social processes like misogyny and sexism. It was revelatory. The book talked about how pop culture demonized straight white men because they're the only demographic left that's acceptable to make fun of.
There you go.
The chapter that stood out the most was about how men are portrayed as these bumbling oafs on television, especially sitcoms. Their wives, meanwhile, are these enlightened women who have to endure their idiot husbands. Pop culture conveyed men as court jesters, the fools. The women were the empowered ones, the voices of reason. Home Improvement with Tim Allen speaking in grunts was the primary example. Looking back,
I never had an issue with that, by the way. Like I always saw that as freeing for men, that they were able to be the clown. I was never at that stage where I was complaining about men being bumbling idiots on the telly. I thought, why don't women have the fucking privilege of being able to be bumbling idiots? It's freeing being able to be a bumbling idiot, you know?
Well, it bothers me when you just always have this sort of image of the wife as this sort of scold. She's this moral scold. She's like, and you see it on all kinds of sitcoms out there, that she's just automatically smarter, knows better. She talks down to him. She essentially rules the roost, right? And it just, I would love to see some balance. I really would.
Shall we?
looking back, I realized how improvement
Up! Put it up!
It was about a ridiculously successful man who had his own TV show, was his own boss, and took over the entire garage so he could spend all his free time fixing up old cars. His wife, however, was relegated to the domestic sphere. And even though she had a job, it was always incidental to her role as a mother and wife. But it took me a long time to realize that.
Okay, yeah, no. She wasn't relegated to the domestic sphere, right? She was in charge of it, right? And she saw herself as the one to be in charge of it. I mean, I'm sorry, ladies, you're your own fucking worst enemy, right? Because you often have a man who wants to help out around the house. You often do, right? But he doesn't wash the kids' hair properly. He doesn't change the diapers properly. He doesn't wash the dishes properly. He lets them air dry. He doesn't dry them, and that leaves spots on the glasses, right? He doesn't do things to your high fucking standard, so you muscle him out. That is what I see so many women doing to their men. Just let him fucking do it. Let him help out. Let him do it the way he wants to do it. Like spots on the glasses are not the end of the fucking world.
The show was called Home Improvement. I mean, that was I know it's a joke, but the joke was he was improving his home. He was getting to grips with the domestic sphere. Every fucking episode was about something, learning a lesson about his kids and how to raise them and shit. I mean, I'm trying to explain the premise of a shitty 90s sitcom now. Look what you're doing to me, people.
Yeah, I know. He's this guy. He's this guy who's like trying to figure out how to deal with his family, trying to figure out how to deal with the domestic sphere, and all he's got is this wife who's like, she's just like judging him everything he does, everything he tries, she's just like judging him and finding him lacking. No wonder he wants to spend all of his time out in the fucking garage with his cars.
Go ahead, Mike.
All right. My sense men were losing their place in society, or my reading spreading misandry. But I do know the book crystallized that feeling. The bookstore had this policy that allowed employees to essentially check out a book and report back to their colleagues about it. The idea was this would increase the literacy of the staff so we could all sell books more effectively. So I came back a week later and told them about spreading misandry. Usually the book reports elicited conversation, but mine was met with stern silence. You know, this guy has some valid points, although some parts are a little extreme, I said. All the staff members present.
This guy? Who? Who are we talking about? Catherine Young?
When a woman says something he doesn't want to hear, she just goes into the memory hole, I guess.
Yeah.
Continue, Mike.
Students, some older women, and they started warily eyeing each other as I talked. I thought it was going to be my Sermon on the Mount, that I was revealing something that everyone needed to know. Instead, a woman in her 50s looked at me for about 40 seconds of awkward silence before the manager said, "Okay, thanks for that."
What I don't know why that was the one detail you included about that scene. I mean, obviously it was a long time ago, but the one detail you remember was a 50-year-old woman looking at you for 40. So they were all looking at you. Presumably, if you were silent for 40 seconds, everyone was fucking looking at you. Why is your own memory of a 50-year-old woman? And why a 50-year-old woman? I don't want to get Freudian on you, bruv, but there's something going on there.
No, it's because she's like, she could be his mother. She could be his mother looking at him with those, her arms crossed over her chest and that look on her face of utter disapproval, right? And where did I go wrong raising a boy like you? Yeah, that's why. That's why. She could have been his mom, looking at him that way, right? And somehow we're supposed to, I don't know, like, he's like, okay, there's this scholarly work that I just read, and it really kind of opened my eyes to a few things, a few problems that men have, and yeah, it gets a little extreme, but, the guy, Catherine Young, and, her dude bro freaking partner, writing partner, gay Paul Nathanson, right? They make some valid points. Oh, and all of the biddies, all of the women just glare disapprovingly at him, right? They just glare at him. They're just like, they got nothing to say about it. How dare you present this fucking bag of turds, right? You just literally brought a bag of turds, stuck it on top of the birthday cake, right? Opened it up, right? And now we're all looking at it. How dare you, young man, right? That's, of course he turned to feminism. Fucking retard. Because you know what? You know what turning to feminism isn't going to get you? It's not going to get you that.
Go ahead, Mike.
It was one of the most cringeworthy moments from that period of my life. At the time, though, it was just confirmation of misandry. Why would they be so angry if they weren't threatened by what I was saying?
Good point.
My co-workers were a lot less friendly to me after that. About 3 weeks later, I was fired. I have absolutely no evidence that it was connected to my book summary.
I wonder why you didn't tell us why you were fired then. Because you know what? In Canada, it's illegal to fire somebody without just cause, right? So they would have had to have given you a reason.
Yep. They would have had to have given you a reason, and you either aren't telling us that reason, which doesn't make sense why you would even include this detail, or you actually do suspect it had to do with what you were saying in that book report. And it's interesting how, in my case, when a bunch of people reacted in an extreme and prejudicial manner towards me because of something I believed, I didn't stop and say, hey, maybe what I believe is wrong. I actually stopped and said, hey, maybe the approach that they're taking by engaging in these activities, like ejecting someone from a convention, silencing people, firing people, maybe that means that what they're doing is wrong. Maybe that doesn't reflect very well on their belief system. You know, maybe they are wrong. Instead of thinking that you were wrong because you got fired and you got ostracized, why didn't you ever consider that maybe they were wrong for doing those things?
I think it behooves anyone to ask both questions. Am I wrong? I think that that's a good question to ask all the time. All the time. Am I wrong about this? Am I wrong about this? And I always, like, I ask this of myself whenever I hear a very slick, feminist argument, where she's literally, she's trying to sell you a lemon, but she's doing it real well, right? And I'm reading and I'm like, am I wrong? Am I wrong? And then I take apart the arguments that she's making, and I realize, I'm not actually wrong. She's wrong.
Well, and the other thing is that, I mean, yeah, you have to account for the possibility of being wrong. But the fact that your opponent is willing to not actually argue the point, but fire you or get you ejected or silence you, tends to suggest that their position may not be as valid as you might think. If they have to use those tactics, might not be that valid. So it's the tactics itself that maybe make you rethink their position and the validity of it. Because if they were able to argue it, you'd think that's what they do. Okay, unless Mike has something to add to that.
I want to say banana anyway, so I'm going to say banana.
Kind of an asshole back then. I was rude and had a tendency to snap at people I considered less intelligent. I was so confused at that time in my life, so unsure of myself, that I was especially susceptible to something like men's rights.
Okay, stop. All right. So you were confused about yourself. You had an uncertain identity, and so you were susceptible to men's rights. No, I'd actually say you're more susceptible to feminism, because it's a very seductive. I think it's a very seductive philosophy for a lot of guys who are exactly like that. Like it's seductive because it gives you the sense that you are very, very powerful.
Yep.
And
he wasn't even calling it men's rights at the time. He goes on to explain that he didn't even hear the term men's rights until 2005, I think it was. And yet he's describing it at this point in the story as him getting into men's rights. It's just terminology, but I'm not the one playing the games.
Okay, banana.
All right. Banana.
Over the map. I thought I was a libertarian at the same time that I was more deeply exploring my Catholicism, which is about as confused as you can get. Being a libertarian doesn't really...
Okay. So what this guy is saying is that he's attracted, deeply, deeply attracted to black and white worldviews, right? He's deeply attracted to the idea that there's a God and a devil and a heaven and a hell and a one true path to salvation and a million other paths to damnation, right? That are all caused by sin. He's attracted to the idea that the free market can solve every single fucking problem and make life perfect for everybody, right? That you don't need a government to build roads or to put out fires or maintain an army or any of those things. That you don't need the state at all because the free market can take care of everything, and you don't need borders because that infringes on people's freedoms and all of this stuff and getting rid of the state 100%, right? That and allowing the free market to just flourish unimpeded and uncontrolled, right, will bring about a utopia, right? Like, this guy is very, very attracted to black and white thinking. I would actually suggest that rather than adhere to Catholicism or libertarianism or feminism, he get himself to a fucking psychiatrist and see if he doesn't have borderline personality disorder.
I just, yeah, you're right. He is really attracted to black and white thinking, and I think a lot of people who are shopping for an identity rather than rationally looking at stuff and sort of, picking up the puzzle pieces, seeing if they fit this way, seeing if they fit that way. Somebody who's looking for an identity rather than just having an opinion on something or engaging in a particular action, I think that is prone to black and white thinking too. So. I don't know if he's necessarily borderline. I just think he's one of those people who isn't really interested in analyzing the situation and developing his own ideas about it. He just wants to snuggle into a skin that'll make him feel good, which
Yeah, that's pre-made for him.
which is not surprising. Like I'm not, from what he said from the beginning, I am not surprised he landed on feminism, because if there's any a snuggly skin that a man or a woman could, maybe not a woman so much, but a man could slip into, it's the idea of patriarchy. It comes replete with the sense that you are of ultimate power, even though you do have to feel bad about it. So for somebody who feels inadequate and lost and insecure, I can see the appeal. I can
Oh
definitely
yeah.
see the appeal.
You are the rock. You are the rock upon which the surf breaks. The surf does not destroy you, because you're a man, right? And men are invulnerable. Even if they're weak, they're invulnerable because society shields them, right? Through privilege and unearned power.
You don't you don't have to regard any of your potential weakness or vulnerability. You can throw it down into the hole of always being responsible. I mean, and it's like it's not. I would imagine it's not a healthy place to be in, to be constantly blamed, but it also can be appealing, I imagine. So let us banana.
Yes, you might say men's rights has a very tough, thin skin that nobody likes, like an apple. And feminism has a very thick, rubbery skin that nobody even eats, like a banana.
Authoritarian hierarchical church. Growing up, I loved guns and hunting and wanted to be in law enforcement. Then in university, I realized I hated hunting and was suspicious of law enforcement.
What the?
God, oh God, he got into university and the fucking Marxist vegans got to him and convinced him that he hated hunting, even though he grew up loving it, and that he is suspicious of law enforcement, even though he aspired to be in law enforcement. Oh God. Oh God.
I mean, any ounce of respect I had for you is gone now. They even took your dreams. I thought you were a tourist of life or something, but you had dreams, and even they got. Oh, man. I feel for you, bro. I don't know what you're going through, but I fucking feel for you.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. You just. Let's continue.
All right.
Later, I discovered I suffer from clinical depression. There's a lot of literature on how socially extremist groups, such as men's rights or white supremacy, exploit young.
Okay. You notice you didn't say men's supremacy and white supremacy. The equivalent of white supremacy is the mere advocacy of the rights. Well, you keep calling it activism, but even you notice there's no such thing as a men's supremacy group. No one's calling themselves that. No one has the balls, and no one even means it, because it's a fucking stupid idea, and most men understand that. But some people just want to advocate for the rights that are missing, and that's just as bad as the people who nominally think whites are the supreme race. It's fucking. Oh.
Yeah, no, and it's like he was diagnosed with clinical depression. Okay, well, feminism is definitely for you then, because fucking yeah, no, it's. I got this email from this trans woman yesterday, and she was very, very hostile. As far as men's rights activists and the whole bit, and she grew up with an extremely abusive father, actually stepfather, and she found feminists. She says MRAs are not interested in healing historical trauma of men, that, the cycle of abuse, and men's rights activists are not interested in that. They're not interested in tackling these problems. And then she went on to say that essentially the gender system was what taught her stepfather to treat her the way he did back when she was a, boy. And her entire thesis that she got from feminism was that this is masculinity. This is what masculinity is. This is what enculturated masculinity is training men to abuse, training men to be violent. And I am blown away at how feminists can take somebody vulnerable like that. This is a trans woman who grew up being brutally terrorized and abused by her stepfather. And they see that vulnerability and they're like, yeah, I can convince this person that this is what masculinity is. Masculinity, cultural masculinity, the culture, the ideals of masculinity, right, are not the ideals of masculinity that my father was raised in, right, where, yes, there is some expectation that you should be willing and capable to mete out and absorb violence to protect your wife and your children, not to abuse and terrorize them, right? And to protect those weaker than you, not to abuse and terrorize and bully them, right? This is what socially constructed ideals of masculinity are. These are the masculine virtues, that you are strong, you are stoic, and the whole idea that her father was socialized and enculturated into normalized masculinity, right, that led to him choking her and beating her and terrorizing her mother and all of these things, right? That's not stoicism. That is a man who is completely not in control of his emotions, right? That's not masculinity. That man gets an F for masculinity in every classical sense of the word, right? But she's been taught by feminists that her stepfather is an example of what standards of masculinity in male culture produce and have always produced: abusers, right? Violent, horrible, mean, bullying, terrorizing abusers. That is what the gender system teaches men to be, right? And feminists would not be able to convince her of that, except for the fact that she was emotionally vulnerable. She was emotionally traumatized. She had not gotten past that trauma, the trauma of her childhood. So they just freaking got their little fucking hooks into her, right? Just like they got their hooks into this depressed guy, clinically depressed, and they see it and they just grab onto it. Here's a damaged person. Let's pull him into our little fucking army.
Yeah,
it's disgusting.
Well, it's disgusting. It's also like the belief that you're invulnerable. I can again see that that's really attractive if you have a mental illness. Like that, it's a seductive poison. Like I've described it before as junk food gender roles. It's very seductive to people. It's easy. It hits all the pleasure centers. It's much harder to recognize that women are not saints, not goddesses. They actually do fantasize about some pretty grotesque shit. And I don't bring that up to make women feel bad, but to recognize that women do not have they don't have a pedestal upon which to make judgment of men's sexuality, because women's sexuality is pretty fucking depraved. and that's fine. You know, as long as it's fantasy, no worries. Just don't judge men for that. And it's like, where am I going for this? It's just banana.
Particularly as long as it is just fantasy, please. Don't start, screwing the world around so it looks like your fantasy. Just keep it to this hell place where the demons fuck you. Just believe in that. Don't bring it to Earth, please.
Yeah, don't try to remold and construct men in the images of rapists, because that's really vile. That's not that most normal men. That's a horrifying thought. Like I once had, okay, this is too much information time, but once had sex with my husband, and I actually was a little bit less, like, quieter than usual, and he like looked at me. He was freaked out for a week. He's like, did I force you? And I'm like, no, I just felt a little quiet today, and he's like just from that freaked out for a week. And
when I was starting to do the radio show for A Voice for Men, we had one caller call in, and he said his wife asked him to, enact a rape fantasy, do a little bit of, and it wasn't even like a rape. It was, he just kind of went into the bedroom and kind of threw her on the bed, and, basically my normal sex life, and just pulled her pants down and gave it to her, right? And that I just eat that up. That's just great for me. But this was something that, like, months and months later was still bothering him. It was still bothering him because she enjoyed it and she was happy, right? But he could not reconcile the idea that he could be forceful with her that way.
Yes, it's like this is the average guy, feminists. That the idea of raping someone actually is really abhorrent to them. Even if it's consensual, if it's just rape play, it still was bothering them. I can't imagine, like, if I was a guy, or from what I've heard, did you imagine a guy getting a girl naked and then on her panties it says, what is that thing that they put on their panties? Don't rape me.
Oh yeah, no,
That might as well be a chastity belt there, lady. You're never getting laid with those on.
Boner killer, holy shit.
Yeah, I gotta be somewhere else now. But anyway, it's like the normal guy is not and would never think of that. And even the just remotely going towards the idea of rape is really difficult for a lot of guys mentally. And here you are pumping this toxin of rape culture into the atmosphere. No care in the world about all of the species or good feelings that it's killing. Let's just pump some more rape culture into the atmosphere. You don't give a shit. Like, I guess feminists just don't realize actually how sensitive normal guys are to the R word. Or maybe they do, and they are deliberately torturing men. I like to think that's not the case. Sometimes I have to wonder, though.
All right, banana.
Young men whose lives are in turmoil, their beliefs in conflict. Spreading misandry was a recruitment piece, and I was an easy target. My girlfriend and I broke up at the end of that summer, and I was devastated. The majority of my friends were women, but I started withdrawing from them and hanging out with guys more.
What? Wait. What the fuck's wrong with that?
Yeah, I don't understand what the problem is. Okay, so you think that spreading misandry was a recruitment piece. No, it was actually just a scholarly work. It was a content analysis, essentially, of popular media. So yeah, it wasn't a recruitment piece. The reason why you fell for it hook, line, and sinker was because a lot of it made sense to you. Because a lot of it is actually sensible.
Can I just say something? This reads more, for me, it reads more like somebody who's like, I was following the Atkins program, but then I discovered McDonald's. It's like, well, yeah, McDonald's spoke to me more than Atkins. Well, of course it did, because it hits all your pleasure centers. Like, it makes you feel fulfilled on an animal level. That's feminism. It's going to hit all your pleasure centers as a man. That's feminism. You got your guilt. You got your excessive responsibility. You got your idolization of women. You got your fantasy of male omnipotence. It's going to hit all of those pleasure centers. And people, I hate to say it, there's a good contingent of people who love to feel guilt. They go and they need to have that guilt flagellation, or they just don't feel right.
It's maybe they're raised with guilt and it's just what they're used to, or maybe guilt is guilt is at least a sign that you've accomplished something.
I think the guilt just filled a hole. If there's a hole somewhere, and whatever fills it is going to become your pet emotion, isn't it? Yeah, I know it's just guilt. I could take it out and put joy in there, but I've had it for so long. It's like a pair of old shoes now. My guilt. Don't take it away from me.
Really I love the golden arches. They just speak to me as a human. This Atkins crap, it never spoke to me. It was hard. It was difficult. It went against my instincts, but I have discovered the warm embrace of crap food.
Oh, yes.
It's hilarious that he's talking about a single book that he read as a recruitment tool, and he's about to go on to talk about how he then took sociology and the fucking ranks of feminists who brainwashed him. Yeah, that's nothing to do with recruitment, is it, fella?
Yeah, I know. He managed to take a book, read it all by himself, right, and think, this actually makes some sense. And then he gets himself subjected to an entire indoctrination program, and he thinks that the one book is what brainwashed him, and he's been now, I guess, deprogrammed or brought around to the right way of thinking.
I know, it's great. And it's not the people who are engaging in these practices of firing people or silencing people or getting them ejected from convention. They're not the ones who are wrong.
They're just creators, you see. Is that woman who wrote a book? She's the recruiter.
Uh-huh.
Us people in the barracks.
That Kathy...
It wasn't a woman, because she was a guy. It was a guy. This guy has a few valid points, right? Yeah, no, he doesn't even remember that it was a woman who co-authored the book.
No, okay. So far, his conversion to men's rights has included reading one book, the authors of which he does not remember, and speaking about it at a book report and getting the stink eye from some older woman.
No, from a whole room full of women.
Oh, from a whole room full of women. Well, because of course...
Yeah. And then getting fired a couple weeks later for no appearance.
And this is all... This is his foray into men's rights. Well, congratulations, guy. They apply pressure and you buckled. Yeah, men's rights is hard. It's not easy. I know from personal experience, it demands a lot from me emotionally. I'm not complaining about it, but it does. You have to question a lot of your normal stupid assumptions as a woman. I know that's true about men too. Men's rights is difficult for men as well as women, because it's like trying to sort of bend your arm in a way that it doesn't necessarily bend. It's a little bit uncomfortable. Oh, but maybe if you practice at it, you can be as flexible as a yogi. I don't know. Anyway, I think I went off the rails there.
This was a long time ago, but before social networks. So there's literally just this book. He had no one else to talk to about this. And this presumably was the case until we had an internet a little bit like this. It was just isolated people, like one person in one library in every town maybe reading that book, So
there was an internet.
Because they were outnumbered, horribly outnumbered.
Well, but social media didn't exist like it does now.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But go on, because I have something to say.
You want a banana?
Yes.
All right.
It became less about friendship and more about who I could hook up with. I sought out other men who felt like me. This was in the Web 1.0 pre-social media days, so it was mostly chat rooms or poorly written proto-blogs on Angelfire, AOL, and GeoCities. All of them were fueled by rage and fear.
Okay, wait.
The myth of male power.
Okay. You're going to have to back up a little. All right. In the early 2000s, as far as I can tell from being part or periphery to the men's rights movement, the big things were forums like a Stand Your Ground forum where you could chat with this particular type of technology, and news groups, the men's rights news group. I have no idea what he's referring to when he talks about a chat room or these blogs, because I don't recall that being. I mean, I guess Angry Harry was around, and then Glenn Sachs, and but those, I don't think they were GeoCities or Angel. What the hell is he talking about? He doesn't talk like he was actually part of the early community on the web of men's rights, because I was. And I know that there were the news groups and the forums, particularly Stand Your Ground forum and the men's rights news group. Those were the sort of the bigger hubs. And then eventually there was Reddit, but he was around at that time. Why didn't he ever notice those things? Like, why is he talking like he wasn't even on the web at that time? Oh, anyway. Aside from there's echo. I think it's you, Mike. Yeah, it's you, Mike.
If that's me, that's bad. Oh, okay.
Well, let's solve that, and then I can keep talking. So it just seems like I don't know where he's going with it. It doesn't sound authentic. It doesn't sound like he really was part of the early men's rights movement on the web. It sounds like he's faking all of this somehow. But I guess listen and believe. It just seems it doesn't seem like it's consistent with what I remember. Yeah,
I wasn't around at that time, so I didn't even get on the internet really until 2007. So
yeah, there was before social networks like Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr. There were platforms like news groups and IRC and forums. And they were attached usually to websites, yes, or not news groups, but or ISC, but forums were attached to websites, and that's where we would congregate and talk about things. And the conversations were usually very involved and interesting, and because the forum is a really good place for extended, in-depth conversations. Twitter is not, Facebook is not, social media is not.
Well, that's why Reddit is so popular, is because it mimics those older forums in the sense of being able to leave long comments and have long involved conversations with people. I mean, not that it's always used that way, but it can be used that way.
Yeah, it can be. So the Reddit was like a takeoff of those other forums. But that's where men's rights was in that time, and it doesn't sound like he was really a part of any of those communities. Because I was going to ask, well, what was your screen name then? Edwin? I think it's Edwin. Was it Edwin? Is that his name?
I think so. Yeah. I don't fucking
know. What
know.
was your screen name? Maybe I'll take a look to see if you were up in one of those areas. Because if he wasn't in them, I don't think he really wasn't that involved in men's rights. But shall we banana?
Yes, that's been on. I've moved it back a little
on
bit.
Angel Fire, AOL, GeoCities, all of them were fueled by rage and fear.
Yeah.
I read a little bit of The Myth of Male Power by Warren Farrell, and I adopted this rhetorical trick many men's rights activists employ. I'm not a feminist, and I'm not a men's rights activist. I would say, I'm an egalitarian.
What?
Oh, shit. That's not going to solve any of your problems, is it, guys? Yeah, let's call ourselves egalitarians, then we'll be safe. Ha-ha!
No. If you say you're not a feminist, but you're an egalitarian, you are by default an MRA. Get over it. Because, the only reason why you wouldn't be a feminist is if you're an MRA. And so, yeah, no, it's not a rhetorical tactic, I don't think. I do think that there are a lot of people who are egalitarians and who don't go to one side or the other, but that isn't going to stop them from being lumped in like this guy just lumped all of them in.
Nope. Egalitarianism is now a men's rights project. Sorry, guys.
I'm sure they won't do that with humanism. It's fine, don't worry.
Of course not. Oh no, of course not. No. We will find the perfect name that will appease the feminists and make them not call us men's rights activists or advocates. I mean,
Oh, I know which one. I know which one. It's feminist.
no, because they'll still call Christina Hofstammer's an MRA. It doesn't fucking matter, guys, what we call ourselves. As long as we engage in men's rights advocacies, we're men's rights advocates, according to them. You know, you can call yourself a humanist, you can call yourself egalitarian, you can call yourself a feminist, you can call yourself a fucking alien from Alpha Centauri, but as long as you engage in advocating for any men's issues, or to bringing attention to any men's issues, they will call you a men's rights activist. And if you say, no, I'm not a men's rights activist, you will have to then defend yourself. You'll have to defend your decision not to call yourself a men's rights activist. And the only way you can defend it is by saying, well, they're just a bunch of assholes. And then you've just proven their point for you. Like, they are making you argue their own position by doing that.
Yeah. It's fucking beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very, very fucking clever trick. If you just say, yeah, oh, wow, Captain Obvious, I've just advocated for an issue for men. You have just stated something. As an advocate for men's rights, somebody who engages in advocacy for men's rights, I am a men's rights activist. Thank you, Captain Obvious. You have added nothing to this conversation. And then move on. Because they haven't added anything to the conversation. Nouning the verb adds nothing. Nothing. Unless you're an ideology and you have additional belief systems attached to it. And when you want to say, like use an example of the runner. If someone said, no, I run every day, but I don't want to call myself a runner, you ask, well, why? If you run every day, do you not want to call yourself a runner? Well, because other runners are assholes. And then...
No one ever found... Sorry, I've heard this story before as well. No one ever found women's rights advocacy like incompatible with egalitarianism or humanism. You notice this, no one ever had this argument. No one ever said you can't be a women's rights advocate and an egalitarian at the same time. But it's coming up here for no good reason other than identity politics. Because this is how you translate just this petulant stamping your foot and saying, no, I don't want this action in my version of egalitarianism. My version of humanism is humanism plus. That means it doesn't have any misogyny. I mean, MRAs. It's atheism plus all over again. They're going to make you add a plus to anything you do. Like a fucking burning cross on the lawn of free speech. Don't do it.
Yeah. Well, but if you say I'm not a men's rights advocate after you've obviously engaged in men's rights advocacy, then you are in a position of arguing why. Well, you can just simply say, you know what, I don't do it enough. So I just don't think that I qualify for the label. But if you're saying, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not my focus, but if you categorically say I don't want to be called that, then you're in a position of doing their argument that men's rights advocates are assholes for them. Because you are now explaining to them why it is you don't want to be called that. And we're not assholes. Some of us are, but there's nothing innate to men's rights advocacy that creates assholes, just like there's nothing innate in the act of running that creates assholes. There are assholes who run, and often they're very vocal about their running. And that might be the clue there. A lot of assholes tend to be very vocal about the things that they do because they want to be known for them. And they want to get people, I don't know, whatever positive points for them. But most runners are not assholes, nor does the act of running create assholishness in people, which is where you're going when you say, yeah, I'm engaging in men's rights advocacy, but I don't call myself a men's rights advocate, because they're assholes. Well, unless you're saying they have the exact same proportion of assholes as any other group, excluding those groups that actually base their rhetoric on being assholes to people, then what you're saying is something about the act of advocacy for men makes you an asshole. And that's exactly where they want you to be. They're doing their argument for you. You're doing their argument for them, sorry.
Imagine explaining what a men's rights advocate is to someone who's never heard of this argument. It wouldn't be that difficult, would it? They wouldn't have much of a problem with it. Well, it's advocacy for the rights of men. It's just as essential as women. Yes, of course. It's only because they've fucking been subject to everything the media tells them. That much is true. They've got out ahead of us and made a reputation for the very act of men's rights advocacy, just because it sounds so bizarre to the generations of people who've already drunk a lot of the Kool-Aid. You know, the stage was set, you know, to create a fucking society where everyone's convinced forever that women always need more rights and men never need any, will never need any again, to the point where it was already a forgotten and absurd term to be a men's rights advocate. So I think we just reached the point where naturally it became so absurd that the moment someone even mentioned the term, it was able to fucking cause this bubble storm in the media we've created.
Well, I think
on a tangent there.
I think too. There's because there are a lot of single issues groups, right? In this sort of wider umbrella of the men's rights movement. You know, you got Women Against Paternity Fraud, and you got Leading Women for Shared Parenting, and you've got alimony reform groups, and you've got Stop Abusive and Violent Environments, and you've got so you've got all of these sort of Parental Alienation Awareness Organization, Equitable Child Maintenance and Access Association, or Society rather. You've got all of these single issue groups, and people don't seem to have a huge problem with those as far as, I mean, they don't get a lot of funding, they don't get a lot of help, people don't get impassioned about those things, but they don't seem to have a huge problem with them existing, because I think everybody knows that men have a problem in divorce court, or men have a problem in custody hearings, or men have a problem when it comes to paternity fraud, or men have these kind of problems. It's when you actually try to attribute all of these different problems to a single cause, whether that single cause is systemic sexism against men, which exists, or if you go further down another layer into the onion and you attribute that systemic sexism to the gender empathy gap and male disposability, right, which are broad concepts that describe entire societies and how gender is viewed in those societies, right? That is where people start kicking and screaming and saying, that can't be right. Women are the ones who are oppressed, blah, 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 right? So, I mean, like, it really is this resistance because we've had so much. I mean, it is really like sort of the case law standing in the way. In Canada, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, in one breath says, it's illegal to discriminate on the basis of sex, and then in the immediate subsection underneath that clause, it says this does not apply to any attempts to rectify historic disadvantage, right? Which means that every single, and women are viewed under the body of case law as the historically disadvantaged gender. So, of course, they get affirmative action, and they get quotas, and they get this, that, and the other. They get extra financing, they get extra help, they get, grants, they get bursaries that men don't, they get all kinds of things, they get extra protection, because they were historically considered, they are considered to be historically disadvantaged compared to men, right? But every single decision that brings women closer to equality, every single court case that decides in favor of rectifying a disadvantage on, that is being, pushed on women, imposed on women, that does two things. It brings women closer to equality, but it also adds to the body of case law that describes them as disadvantaged, right? So you get to this point where women have overshot equality, right? But the case law is more firm than it ever has been, right? That they are actually disadvantaged compared to men, that men are advantaged compared to them. So now it becomes next to impossible for any man who wants to argue that feminism has overshot equality and now it's men who suffer a disadvantage in any given area, right? When he wants to bring a lawsuit, there's this mountain of case law all screaming, women are disadvantaged and men are privileged, standing in his way of even getting a hearing, right? To even see if the lawsuit can go forward, to have a decision come about that actually would say, yes, in this one area, men are suffering disadvantage now, right? So you essentially have two completely opposite things happening, where you have women getting closer and closer and closer to equality and even overshooting it, but you have the body of law, of case law, saying they're more disadvantaged than ever, essentially. There's more evidence than ever that they're disadvantaged and that men are advantaged. So, and the more that case law builds up, the easier it is to prove the next case when a woman sues over, that she's being discriminated against. And it makes it harder for a man to actually even get his case into a courtroom, pleading that he's being disadvantaged, right? So, I mean, like, this is like a fundamental flaw in our fucking system right now. And it's a fundamental flaw in our brains. We've been subjected to this rhetoric that women are disadvantaged, women are oppressed, men are privileged, men are privileged. It's like we have a body of case law in our minds, right, that all says that, right? And so maybe we can see, maybe people, the public can see, okay, I suppose in divorce court, men suffer a disadvantage, but, systemically discriminated against? Nah. No, women are the oppressed ones. That's what I've been learning since grade school. Fucking stupid, and it's annoying.
Banana.
Alrighty.
I'm saying banana just because I don't feel like I have anything to add to what Karen is saying. I'm not trying to shut her down or make her feel like her contribution isn't valid.
Yeah, no,
I muted myself, so I was done.
We're only halfway through, and we've been at it for an hour and a half, so we should motor at this point.
Yeah.
All right.
I didn't encounter the term men's rights until 2005.
You don't say.
Right before social media really took off. I'd Google men's oppression or anti-feminist and find anything I was looking for on people's blogspot sites or in their comments or on pre-Reddit sites like Fark and, of course, 4chan. Every once in a while, I'd stumble across MRAs advocating killing feminists.
What?
Yeah, I know. Just fucking ignore that. I mean, I can only think of one person who might have, and he was probably active maybe around that time. He may have been around and that would be Peter Nolan. And he hates MRAs.
Peter Nolan, copyright. That guy.
Oh, yeah, sorry, trademark.
Oh, Jesus fucking... but he's a loon! Oh, wait. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Is that Kroll?
No, it's actually correct. I stumbled across him, right away, immediately after I stumbled into this movement, and he's really unhinged. He seems to think that we can build a parallel court system.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, that would somehow be recognized by, the government. And that all you need to do is declare to your government that I'm not your subject, and you're no longer the government's laws no longer apply to you. I mean, it's just very, very strange.
Yeah, another one of those tourists of life, except he's one of those tourists that goes around bombing every country he visits. he basically turned up, called himself an MRA for a while, and then buggered off and called himself something else. Just like you did, friend. Just like a load more fucking losers will. No offense.
Yeah, let's
Yes. Let us. Le banan.
It's insane.
Yes.
But then I do what a lot of MRAs do. I'd say those voices are on the fringe and argue that they didn't speak for the movement as a whole.
Okay, so how's hashtag kill all feminists going? And how's hashtag kill all men going? And where's the fucking fringe here?
Yeah, that's a good point. Oh, I'm gonna start muting and unmuting you, because I think that'll help with the echo. But yeah, that's a really freaking good point. Feminists. Kill all men, still going strong. Kill all feminists, I haven't even heard of it. So I think that, yes, we can safely say that kill all feminists is on the fringe, at the very, very closest of the people who engage in advocacy for men's rights. And again,
Yeah,
that's
but
an
I mean,
action.
look at how they frame things. Do you remember when Big Red was getting all that negative attention, and Futrell did an article where he screenshot a bunch of comments, threatening comments, and one of them was Danny Boy, Dan Perrins, and he was saying, I kind of feel bad for you, but I guess it's like kind of you're reaping what you sow, but it's a real shame that people are being mean to you, and that was included in Futrell's big list of threatening comments. And then the only one that actually was, I mean, there were some that were like, go die in a fire, you deserve to be raped, blah, 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 right? The only one that was actually really, really egregious, which was something like, if I saw you walking down the street, I'd put a bullet in your stomach or something like that, right? That guy, his objection to her was that she makes feminism look bad. So he's probably a fucking feminist. But I mean, look at what they see. Look at what they see as threatening, as violent rhetoric. Right? Dan Perrins going, it's a real shame that people are being mean to you. Like, but I can't say you didn't ask for it, but, that's not okay. Right? That's a threatening, that's violent, horrible, evil rhetoric. Right? Whereas, kill all men. That's just fine.
What do you expect from the people who point fingers at Mike? I gotta meet you. Point fingers at like Paul Elam's bash of violent bitch month. It's right in the title, people. It's right in the title. Violent bitch. So you think that violent bitches deserve to be allowed to be violent bitches?
Well, yeah, and it's there in the fucking article saying it's satire, and it's down at the bottom saying, am I serious? No, right? But this article is in response to an article up on Jezebel where women are laughing and just getting their groove on, talking about how they've beaten up their boyfriends.
And the thing is that they never even consider, it's like, it's in response to an article which is basically bash a non-violent guy month. Bash a guy who's doing nothing at all month. Just bash a guy month. Yeah. And then he turns around and says bash a violent bitch month, and all hell breaks loose. Even though the original was basically bashing on guys who did nobody any harm at all.
Yep. Like the one guy, in one of the comments, I still remember this, in one of the comments, this woman was talking about how her boyfriend broke up with her, so she I think she smashed a bunch of his stuff, cut up some of his clothes, and then beat the shit out of him, and he stood there like a pathetic little boy in the doorway, right, and while she's punching him, right, and kicking him out of and slams the door in his face, right, and yeah, because he ended the relationship. That's just fucking great, isn't it? That's wonderful. That's beautiful behavior.
In response to Jezebel's bash a guy who's doing you absolutely no harm at all month, he did bash a violent bitch month. And he's the one who's in trouble. It's just, these people are hypocrites. Anyway, Mike.
My real life was entirely devoted to school, so my men's rights activism occurred exclusively in the classroom.
Was it activism? It wasn't really activism. Now I'm doing it. I'm doing it to the puppet who did it to me. But yeah, that was advocacy at best.
Yeah, and it's not because we want to get away from being men's rights activists. It's because it's not accurate with the actual actions we take. Although I guess you could say the Calgary thing was a men's rights activist act. I just don't know how often I have to go out and get kicked out of a convention for doing nothing but just disagreeing with a panelist. politely disagreeing with the panelist after requesting permission to speak.
Like, the more active we actually get, the more likely we are to get shut down forever. It's quite a tightrope we walk.
Yeah, I suppose. Okay, let's, unless Karen has something to add.
Let's just fucking banana this fucker.
Right.
We talk about the Equal Rights Amendment in a political science class, and I'd say, well, what about men? We'd talk about feminist epistemology in philosophy class, and I'd say, doesn't anyone care about the way men see the world? I saw myself as more than just a provocateur.
Those are pretty good questions.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even call that being a provocateur. I'd call that asking interesting questions. But that's more than a provocateur, is it? A harasser?
Asking for the other side of the story. Asking the opinion of the other half of humanity. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
What
well,
a fucking bastard he was. Oh, horrible. Horrible person.
What people would probably argue is that, philosophy is all the position of men. Like, all the point of view of men. Well, not really. It's
no, I think his classical philosophy historically has probably been informed, at least in part, by men's views of the world. Sure, but not necessarily from. I mean, because men look outward, right? Women look inward. Men look outward, right? And so men are going to ask, how does the world work, right? What are the systems involved? How does it all operate, right? And how do I fit into it? Whereas women are going to look inward and they're going to say, how do I feel about the world around me?
Yeah.
Right.
I think there may be a room for I wouldn't even call it like philosophy, but taking some of those ideas and putting it through how women see the world. But the problem is that some of it is how women see the world. Like, they have a different. I think they have a different intellect, and some of it is just this bullshit about being a victim and seeing everything in terms of how you're reacted upon. So you got to separate the two, if you know what I mean. Like, I think there's a certain. I don't want to say it's a female logic, but there may be like a female way of thinking that isn't necessarily just entirely entrenched with victimhood.
Well, what gets me is, like, because part of feminist epistemology and feminist philosophy is women's ways of knowing, right? But the women's ways of knowing that they talk about are not actually ways of knowing. They're ways of intuiting, right? But they are not based on empiricism. They are not ways of knowing. They're ways of feeling that, like, right? But they're not ways of knowing. So it gets really fucking hairy. And granted, that's not the way all women see the world and view their place in the world, through this sort of deep in my heart, in my soul, in my vagina, I know, as Eve Ensler, said famously at the 2012 Now conference during her keynote address, wherein she used the word vagina and the word rape probably about 300 times each. But, like, feminist epistemology and feminist philosophy want to entrench these particular ways of knowing, these women's intuition. They want women's intuition to have the same veracity, be considered to be on the same level as empiricism, and sort of a detached, dispassionate view of things. And I'm sorry, but you can't know anything in those ways. Your feelings will always interfere with your direct observations of reality, because in order to observe reality, you have to maintain objectivity.
Or at least something
right?
related to it, or something we can agree upon that is objective. But shall we banana? Mike.
Yes, I am just bananing now.
I stayed away from sociology my first 2 years because those classes were predominantly women, and I shared a belief common among science, engineering, and tech people that sociology wasn't real science.
A belief that we now have found is actually realistic, because most of the shit coming out of there, like most of it, I think, or at least 50% of it, is terrible, like totally fake science, totally faked, hands down.
More than 50% of sociological findings cannot be replicated.
Yeah, but banana. Sorry, I just wanted to put that out there. So yeah, scientifically, sociology is bullshit. We have scientific proof of that now. Okay, go ahead.
How men are the root of all evil. But I took an introductory sociology course as an upperclassman. We had these discussions about feminism and patriarchal institutions, and I kept thinking to myself, I don't oppress women. Why am I being attacked? Why am I the victim in this new feminist order? I just
You.
despised sociology. I graduated in 2006 with a political science degree and spent a couple of years doing odd jobs. Bartender, tuxedo salesman. Soon I realized I wanted to do academic work, specifically studying men and masculinity. So I
No.
Not another generation of them. Jesus Christ. Okay, so I thought he had a STEM degree. When did political science get in there?
Oh, I don't know. He took political science, but he didn't have a STEM degree. He had the same opinion as people with STEM degrees that sociology was a load of hooey.
Garbage?
Yeah.
And now we know it is garbage?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's well, I mean, not all of it. Not all of it is garbage. I mean, there is, at least in terms of, like, wanting to understand how societies work, right? And wanting to understand the hierarchies and the power structures and the systems and all of those things. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But the way it always starts with the answer, right? And then decides what question to ask, right? So it's like, women are oppressed. Okay, what question? In what ways are women oppressed, right? Okay, now we've got our question. Let's work our way back to the answer. Women are oppressed. There. Woo! Done. Go to print.
Banana.
Okay.
courses. I was like, I'll use my academic qualifications to talk about men's rights issues. I'll grit my teeth and listen to the feminists and read their stupid books, but then I'll go my own way. Things didn't go as planned. The first semester I took Intro to Gender Theory, and the teacher asked, what does gender mean to you?
The first semester, I started to eat the cafeteria instead of eating my diet. And then I found that all of the sweet, sweet, sweet junk food was so tempting. And so I gorged myself upon it. Of course you're going to find it tempting, because it's easy. Feminism is easy. It's as easy as falling off a bucket.
And now you got diabetes.
Yeah, it's as easy as falling off a bucket into a pond of easy. So, go ahead, Mike.
Appearances as women or gay men. When it was my turn, I said, I'm here to offer a man's point of view on gender. My instructor smiled and said, well, you must love our textbooks then. I looked at the syllabus and saw Masculinities and The Men and the Boys by Raymond Connell.
Okay, so he's there to offer a man's perspective, and they said, oh, you must like our books. Here's 2 of our books by a trans woman who came out in her fucking 50s, right? A woman who was socialized against her gender identity, right? Who was forced to swallow masculine socialization and enculturation against how she identifies, right? Came out at age 50 and now writes about how bad masculinity is, right? And that's a man's fucking perspective.
Hell, Karen, I don't even think they'd let Nora and Vincent's perspective in there.
No, they wouldn't, because you know what? She's actually sympathetic. She's
Yeah.
actually fucking sympathetic because she was raised as a woman. She was raised as a woman. She lived her life as a woman, and then she tried on being a man for 18 months. And oh my goodness, did it ever fucking wreck her? And she didn't end up hating men. She ended up feeling sorry for men, and she ended up looking at women entirely fucking differently.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure she had a little bit of a taste of that as a lesbian, dating women. But apparently it was worse as a man, strangely enough.
Yeah.
But, yeah, this is, no, what, feminist theory, yeah, it talks about men. The way that, you know, like, National Socialism talked about Jews. Like,
Yeah,
it had
pretty
a
much.
place for them. It had a place for them.
Understanding the Jew. Yeah.
Yeah, just understanding the mind of the Jew. And you know, people are like, "Oh my God, that's so much hyperbole." No, it isn't. You're just inured to this shit. Nazis didn't start out with like pictures of Jews going into ovens and saying, "Hey, this is where they belong." They started out by implicating Jews as pedophiles and rapists, and implicating a conspiracy of Jewishness to keep white people down, or
Jew,
Aryan. Yeah,
Jew
Jew privilege to keep the German people down. That's how it started.
I can't
Jews
wait
have
for
all
some.
this unearned. They have an unearned wage gap.
Mm-hmm.
A Jew earns $1 for every 77 cents an Aryan earns.
Go ahead, Mike.
Some feminist somewhere is going to write a book called Understanding the MRA, and it's going to go to print before someone says, "Hey, you know it's the MRM," and they're going to go, "Oh, fuck it, we don't care, it's the MRA now." I think that's how they ended up calling them the Jew. They just, we made a mistake, but fuck it, they're called the Jew now.
Yeah. Well, because they're all the same, right? They might as well just all be one person.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all men are the same. I mean, this guy obviously can't really tell from masculinity from his perspective because there's only one masculinity, the evil kind that oppresses women, and is part of a cabal to keep the woman down and make sure that the men make all the money, and that the women never get to see a dime, and that they're also suffering in eternal poverty, and also raped and molested by in a way that the reverse never happens. It's like this shit is vile. Like, hands down. I remember me and Karen, the last Rantzerker, we were going after, and people were like upset because I guess she's sort of cute and young. And we were going after someone who's talking about toxic masculinity and rape culture and male privilege. This stuff is vile. Like, we can spend hours and hours and hours arguing about how it doesn't actually, the Jewish cabal doesn't actually relate to reality. But when do we get to the point where people realize that talking about cabals of men pushing women down is actually vile and bigoted on the surface? Like, this is not even. I mean, why do we have to continue to argue this shit?
It's permissible. It's permissible bigotry.
Yeah.
On an ethnic scale. Yeah.
This is permissible bigotry. And it's not. It's like, when do we get to the point of recognizing that this is bigotry? Rape culture is bigotry. You're vomiting sexism all over the place. No, that's not just sexism. You're vomiting the kind of bigotry that got men killed brutally. Feminists? And privilege. Privilege is right out of a goddamn hate speech playbook. You want people to hate a group of people, you call them privileged, unjustly privileged. And patriarchy. Tying a word for a father to a system of government that you think is worse than tyranny, fascism, and Nazism are all rolled into one. Like, this shit is just mind-bogglingly vile.
Yeah, look at Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, right? If black men get the vote before women, what will become of our innocent white daughters? If black men get the vote before women, black women will be subjected to a level of oppression under their own men that is dwarfed by the oppression that they suffered during slavery. This is what our noble suffragettes were saying about the relationship between black men and black women.
Hey, Lovestruck, how do you like it now? Sorry, guys.
It's okay.
Oh my God, I apologize. I just got a little bit feisty there for a second.
All right.
So yeah, they won't admit that, when we say you think of men as a cabal trying to keep women down, they say, oh no, we don't think of men as a cabal trying to keep women down. It's nothing like that. And then we say, what do you think of men's rights? Oh, it's a cabal trying to rape women. Yeah, that's how thinly veiled your shit is at this point. All it takes is for us to mention that men should perhaps have rights, and all your fucking demons come out. And you tell us exactly what you really think of men. When you tell us what you think of men's rights advocates, you are revealing to the world what you really think of men. I'll just let that settle, shall I? And I'll slowly banana. This would have been smoother if I could banana quicker, but whatever.
Tip of men's lived experiences. I just thought, well, shit.
Ha!
I read them and it didn't take long for my men's rights beliefs to start falling away. They didn't stand up to the empirical evidence.
I know, because taking the perspective of a trans woman who transitioned, who showed up between one conference and the next, a man at one and a woman out as a trans woman at the very next one without warning, right? In her, I think it was her 50s, might have been late 40s, right? Who did the bulk of her research into masculinity when she was trying to live it despite it not fitting, right? In a culture that is not the culture that Blair White and Theron Meyer have grown up in, where, things are a little more relaxed, and they came out at a very young age and expressed their gender identity, cast off the shackles of the masculinity that did not suit their personality and their identities, right? No, this is a person who was trammeled in an identity that did not fit them, right? For 40 fucking years or more, right? And decided that masculinity is bad. Well, yeah, maybe bad for you. Fuck. And you're going to just take her word for it. You're just going to just drink it all down. Just drink that delicious freaking Kool-Aid.
All right, I think I've riled everyone up enough, so banana.
All right.
I was finally reading research that was informed by feminist theory and offered actual solutions.
Research should not be informed by anything other than the scientific method. You fucking turd ass. What the fuck is wrong with you? Research is supposed to be objective empiricism. It is not supposed to be informed with a set of fucking philosophies that morph into a worldview. It's like saying, oh, I was finally reading research informed by the creationist worldview. And it all started to make sense. Noah's Ark. Kangaroos are possible. You just have to believe that they got launched from a cannon and landed safely halfway around the fucking planet. Like, what? Oh my god. Sorry.
Shall we eat banana?
Men are socialized to be stoic, rational beings. The only emotions we're allowed are anger and joy. And in a precious few instances, we're allowed to cry, like if our sports team loses. As an MRA, I always believed it was women and feminism putting men in this box. But these feminist texts not only validated the crisis of masculinity, they pointed out that men are the biggest policers of masculinity.
Okay.
Because men are the ones drinking from fucking male tears coffee mugs, you cunt.
Yeah, I don't think any man has ever thought or conceived of marketing male tears coffee mugs to other men. No, men are not the biggest policers of gender roles. According to statistics, it's women, it's mothers. And it's
both ways. Children learn sexism at their mother's knees. Both boys and girls learn their gender roles. They learn their place at their fucking mother's knee.
Yep. And then guess what? If you want to know who's policing gender roles or gender norms, I like to do an experiment. I've done it before on the Ragening. Imagine tomorrow every woman in North America, every woman in the U.S. suddenly decided that she just really, really liked men who were bookish, wore tweed and bow ties and drank tea. What the fuck do you think would happen the next day if every woman decided that that was the kind of man she wanted? What do you think would happen with men's behavior? What do you think would happen with the sales of tweed jackets and tea? What do you think would happen with bookstores? What do you think would happen? Now apply that to what this guy is saying, that men are the ones who enforce the gender norms. If women's preferences change, men change with them. Period. And this is such an obvious... I dare anyone to imagine that. Imagine that scenario and not agree with the fact that the next day sales of tweed jackets, bow ties, tea, and books would triple, quadruple, quintuple.
There wouldn't be enough cows on the fucking planet to provide the leather for the elbows on those tweed coats.
No. There would just be almost an instantaneous change in men's behavior because women changed their desires. Now who holds the fucking power in that scenario? And this guy is trying to pretend that that isn't so. When it so patently is so, you have to ask yourself, why is this guy convinced he doesn't have any hands and feet? Because he does. They're obviously on the end of his limbs. But he's convinced he doesn't have them. He must be mentally ill, but nobody is saying it. Nobody is saying to the people who say things like, oh no, it's men who are primarily policing the gender norms. No one ever says to them, what? What?
The only gender norms men police, right, are through their own preference as far as waist to hip ratios and things like that. As far as universal beauty standards, there is some difference from culture to culture, but mostly based on status and what creates status. Like chubby woman 300 years ago was wealthy. Now wealthy women tend to be thin, and poor women tend to be chubby. So we've gotten to the point where, but the same waist to hip ratio, universal across cultures, symmetrical features, clear skin, youth, long limbs, all of those things. Those are standards that men have when it comes to their ideal as far as mating preferences. They don't police that the way women police men, right? Women police men, like men are much more likely to take a woman whose body is imperfect as his, marry a woman, have a long-term relationship with a woman whose body is imperfect, who isn't maybe as young as he would find ideal, whatever, right? Women are incredibly unforgiving when men fail to meet their standards. And if you actually go on dating sites and you look, right? You look at the men, right? I'm just looking for someone around my age who doesn't play head games, right? That's pretty much every fucking male profile out there, right? And she likes to laugh, right? Women, they'll have a fucking itemized list, 100 items long, right, of their requirements for who they're going to date and who they're not. I used to get, as a 40-year-old woman, I used to get tons of hits from guys on dating sites because my list was just like, oh, here's what I have to offer. And I just like somebody who has a job and is nice, has a good personality.
To do the corollary of the experiment, I mean, if every man suddenly decided that he was attracted to women who wear tweed, women would go, what the fuck are you talking about? This dress was made by the most expensive homosexual I could find. Banana.
Beat each other down for being girly, for liking sewing or baking, for crying, for being faggots. You gotta man up. You can't be a pussy, right?
Or you won't attract any women.
Yeah. Yeah, those men are actually trying to help you there. Seriously. They're trying to help you be successful with women.
Why do you think faggot is such a loaded term? You don't even want a woman? How dare you? I mean, MGTOW's almost become the synonymous now with being completely perverse to the point where you don't want to spend all your waking moments becoming desirable to a woman. It's like all the same thing. It's like they're shaming you for not being or for not presenting a desirable face to women, and they're shaming you for not even wanting to.
Yeah,
It's all
not being willing to do what it takes.
Yeah. Okay.
We bananaing again.
Yes.
MRAs and feminists were acknowledging the same problems, but the MRAs weren't locating the right cause.
I know, the cause is men. The cause is men. It's all men. Men did everything. Women did nothing. Men accomplished everything. Men built everything, including all of these harmful norms, and women were just dragged by their hair in the wake of all these evil men, the only people on the planet who are capable of having an effect on the world. That is what feminist theory is.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to know our place, Karen. We need to know that we have absolutely zero effect on the world as women, and we're getting less and less effect because, you know, sexism is getting worse and the situation for women is getting worse despite feminism's best efforts. What?
Think about the fucking air conditioning. Think about those poor women who are allowed, not required, mind you, but allowed to go to work in the office with bare shoulders and bare legs, right? Think about how they're shivering because the air conditioning is set to make things comfortable for their male coworkers who are forced to go to work in long trousers, long sleeve shirts, neckties close to their throats, and blazers. I mean, I don't understand how these women manage.
Banana.
The feminists pointed out, no, actually, this is rooted in the same patriarchal institutions that are harming women. It was subtle, but
They're not patriarchal institutions. They're just gender roles.
Oh my fucking god! Everything is rooted in the institutions that harm women. It seems like all roads lead to female victimhood.
They are all rooted in the same institutions. They are. Okay, I'm willing to grant that, but that isn't the institutions. Could be patriarchal or they could be matriarchal, right? They can be, there is nothing inherently evil about men being in charge. There's nothing about patriarchies that created gender roles. Gender roles create patriarchies under certain environmental conditions. That's all it is. You're applying the causality backwards and blaming men for the whole fucking shebang. You are implying that there is no circumstance on the planet under which men could be in authority over anything that would not create injustice and oppression of women.
Holy shit, yeah. And then you say you don't hate men. Banana.
And feminism showed that men of colour and queer men experience the world differently than the straight white men who dominate MRA groups and assume all men are fundamentally the same and like them.
Oh, God.
I realized all the...
No, no, actually, yeah, they do realize that all men are fundamentally the same because they are men. When did it somehow become that men are not fundamentally the same?
And
minority men.
Failed to mention many MRAs are women. I thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah, but minorities often face exactly the same problems as white men, except in some cases worse, except for mental health issues. For whatever reason, probably because white men are also subject to the belief that they're responsible for every goddamn thing wrong with the universe. You know, Alpha Centauri is a little too far to the right. Better blame Whitey. You know, that kind of shit. Like that may be why the mental health is a little low on that end. But regardless, when it comes to child custody, when it comes to incarceration, when it comes to implication of your sexuality as being dangerous and harmful, minority men get hit by that stick worse than white men. When it comes to
all men get hit.
All men get hit.
Like this is infuriating because there are gay men in the men's rights movement, there are bisexual men in the men's rights movement, there are trans women and trans men in the men's rights movement, there are fucking women in the men's rights movement, there are lesbians in the fucking men's rights movement, or at least who are sympathetic to men's issues. There are tons and tons. When I read, oh God, who was it? I watched Suzanne Venker being interviewed on Fox News, I believe it was, after the first ICMI in Detroit in 2014. And she said that she has been to tons of conferences, and the ICMI was the most diverse crowd she had ever been in. It was the most racially diverse, it was the most diverse according to gender of any crowd that was dealing with gender issues that she had been to.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, no, we're all just straight white men. Hi, I'm Karen Strawn, straight white male. How are you?
Also straight white man. Of course,
Yeah.
Mike is
To be confirmed.
to be confirmed. Okay, all right. Let's shove the banana where it don't shine.
The arguments about male oppression I had bought into were weak, and all the evidence I needed was in feminism.
What? Yeah, okay, well, thank you for affording us the benefit of those strong arguments that feminists offer. So the feminist argument is that the experience of being male is categorically different for minorities than it is for white men. I know. It's not categorically different. There are differences, but it's not categorically different. There are similarities, strong similarities, and they all follow the same lines. The suspicion of male sexuality and the expendability of men. In fact, you might argue that Asian, and to maybe a greater extent white men, are afforded feminine privilege because they're seen as less threatening than black men.
And Hispanic men.
And Hispanic men.
Yeah, and when you actually get right down to it, it's just a matter of degree. It's sort of the same fucking issue. It's not just regarding sexuality, but just the assumption of criminality. I mean, like you're going to get followed around in a store. Whether if you're a black man, you're going to get followed around in a store. If you are, or at least if you're dressed in street clothes, maybe not in a business suit. If you are a white man who's dressed two levels below class-wise from that black man, so maybe you look, even more street, you're gonna get followed around in that fucking store too. You are. Don't lie. You are.
And the other thing is that you better not get close to any kids. I mean, I think to some degree the pedophilia thing hits white men harder than black men.
Yeah, well, because you're not allowed to discriminate against black men in certain ways.
Yeah, well, but also because I think effeminacy seems to be the tie-in with pedophilia.
Yeah.
Whereas black men get associated with the rapey brute more. But it's coming both ways. Both are implications of different men's sexuality. So there are differences. There are differences between the marginalization of black and white men, but there is very, very great commonalities, which isn't the same when you're talking about the marginalization of minority women, because to be honest, the wage gap hits women in the class, the wealthiest classes, because those are the classes that can afford to have a woman stay at home and wage earn. So essentially, the wage gap is a discrimination that hits the wealthiest white women in the world worse, strangely enough, and everybody else doesn't hit quite as bad.
Yeah, pretty
Isn't it funny how that is? Like feminism really is like the issues. A lot of the issues that feminism deals with either hit white wealthy women the hardest, or they just pretend they hit white wealthy women or upper class women the hardest, like rape. Isn't actually true in reality, but feminism makes sure that most of the spending goes to the women who are least likely to be raped, but just happen to be in the wealthier classes, the most privileged. Yeah. Anyway, banana that sucker, I think.
I discovered Reddit, which is a hotbed of men's rights activism, around 2009, but luckily by then I was already moving away from the movement. A lot of the stuff was elementary, anyway. My transformation didn't happen overnight, though. There wasn't really an aha moment, but more of a progression. I had to deconstruct all the MRA beliefs I'd internalized.
You had to unlearn so much and embrace his new religion.
Well, apparently the only thing, the thing is that the only men's rights book so far that he's supposedly read is Spreading Misandry and part of The Myth of Male Power.
Yeah.
So he's, at this point in time, I imagine that 95% of everything he's read on gender is feminism. He just by accident happened to wander upon a men's rights book once. Yeah. But you didn't consider that maybe you're not giving men's rights a fair shake by only reading a book in a quarter. But you read all the feminist books. That's okay. Just book a quarter for men's rights, and then a whole bunch of shit for feminism. And that's being fair. That's giving them both a fair shake.
Yes.
Strange. All right, banana.
When I opened my mouth, I could write these pro-men's rights arguments that I thought made sense. My instructors would say, "This is tautology."
Care to explain?
Women are oppressed, and therefore society oppresses women. There you go, feminist tautology.
Yeah, but how could you afford this is the interesting thing. She's saying all of these miraculous things, that all of these rational arguments that deprogrammed him from being a men's rights activist. How come you're not telling us any of them? I mean,
no, he's not.
Show, don't tell. You're failing. You're failing to convince me that you have all these miraculous arguments against men's rights that came from feminism. I would love to see them, because as of yet, having listened to many feminists, I have yet to hear a truly rational argument against men's rights positions. And I'd love to. Yeah. It would be great to have the caliber of the opposition step up a bit, instead of it being exclusively no you. And the last thing that I got from a feminist is, no, we live in a dick world. A dick world. Okay, well, thank you for your wit and insight. We live in a dick world. You're wrong. We live in a dick world. Okay, that was the sum total of her fucking argument. We live in a dick world. If you've got the really good feminist arguments, why are you holding out on us? Why? Give them to us.
Because you have to actually be exposed to them in the proper context of a completely one-sided program of classes at university, where you're provided with certain reading materials and not others, and certain instruction and not others, and certain viewpoints and not others, and then you can come around to the truth about what how feminism is all about equality for everybody, and so that's why he's not doing that, because you really need to spend a couple of years in a re-education camp to really see what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Fruit salad.
At one point, I made the argument that metrosexualism was oppressive to men, that it was an attempt to feminize us because we were too hairy, because we weren't good enough as we are. One of my female peers turned to me, lifted up her skirt and said, "I shave my legs every day! Don't talk to me about the cosmetics industry oppressing men!"
Okay, so here's the thing. This is what I put.
Sorry,
okay,
bro.
So you've got two people who are pressured by social norms to shave, but only one is a victim. One is the damsel. Thank you, feminism! But you're not about making women into damsels in every conceivable circumstance.
Honestly, I can see the point of the argument, the men's rights argument about shaving and all of that, because the whole point of masculine and feminine is a differentiation, and women naturally have less body hair than men on average, and so having body hair is considered masculine, and having less or no body hair is like, so when you shave your body hair, you become more feminine. When you have body hair, you are by definition more on the masculine end of the spectrum, right? Okay, I can understand, like, but somehow this, we've gotten to this point where, and I think what the point is with men shaving is that their muscles become more visible.
Okay, can I just point something out? If hairiness is an innately male trait, then isn't it more oppressive of innately masculine traits to require men to shave versus women?
Well, I mean, nobody's actually required to shave. That's the really stupid.
That's the stupid part. But if you're going to use feminist logic and men start from a hairier position, the expectation that they shave is more of a denial of their natural masculinity than the expectation that women shave is a denial of their natural femininity.
Yes.
We're actually making men look more like women.
Yes.
Okay, so that is by their logic. I mean, like, I'm not going to say that anybody has to do anything, or it really is an obligate or whatever. Doesn't matter. But by their logic, that's masculophobia, or whatever the fuck they want to call it.
Androphobia.
We can go back to the Tweed example. It doesn't quite sound so hypothetical. What if women decided they want men to wear tweed jackets? Here's one. What if women decided they want men to wear skinny jeans and fucking tight t-shirts and also long beards and problem glasses?
And wax
happen either, would it?
And wax their chests. Yeah. Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Wait, is this
Yes.
the banana? The banana.
I ended up enrolling in a master's program for sociology, and by the end of my first semester I realized I knew nothing. From there, it was a slow process of building. I finished my master's in 2011, and in 2012 I started publicly identifying as a feminist. Now I'm a sociology PhD candidate at the University of Victoria.
Okay.
Still.
So your paycheck is contingent on you believing this shit. Okay, well, congratulations, you're a sellout. Well, that's mean, but it's sort of like, you paid a bunch of people to deprogram you. You didn't even find a way for it to coexist peaceably in your mind. No, it just had to disappear entirely because feminism. And it's not deprogramming you. It's building up on your already existing instincts or emotional comfort zones. As a man, you are comfortable taking responsibility for everything in the world. Possibly one of the most uncomfortable statements, not necessarily for guys who are red pill, but for most men, is to say that they are not responsible, or alternatively, that women aren't, that they may actually be victims of something. Every time I say this to a guy who isn't a men's rights activist, I point something out that is pretty irrefutably nasty that men have to deal with. I always get the same response. But women have it worse. Feminist theory is easy because it returns all of the responsibility to you as a man and all of the victimhood to women. To women. That's easy because it fits right into our mental or our emotional biases to see men as responsible and women as just being responding to men. That just fits right into that really like limbic system vision of gender that you have. So of course it's easy and it's frustrating because it's like, this is the easy path. This is like, feminism is the easy path. You just tell people, yeah, of course, men are responsible for everything. Men are totally omnipotent. Men aren't victims are never greater victims than women. Women are always the one responding to men's actions, who are the responsible ones in every scenario. I mean, that is the most basic and comfortable gender roles in existence. So of course, when you're exposed to them, there's the temptation to slip right back into those crappy junk gender role habits. Because it's an effort not to believe that men actually are discriminated or hurt because they're men, or can be vulnerable because they're men. It's an effort to believe that women can be responsible for shit. That requires effort. It requires vigilance. It's counterintuitive to us because we've built this entire emotional superstructure over the idea that is not so. That men are strong and responsible and women are simply responding to men.
Well, I think too, there are a lot of actual physiological things that go along with that. You know, women's higher levels of neoteny, men physically resembling adults more than women do, even down to having more body hair, having facial hair, having, you know, masculinized facial features, having, you know, having even how men's eyelashes don't stay long after they, you know, they don't stay long and curly after they grow out of childhood, whereas, you know, women, what do when they apply makeup? They make their eyelashes look more neotenous, longer, curlier, right? That's what they do. So when you actually look at this sort of the social construction of everything, the social forces that are pushing us in these directions, and then you look at the physiological ways that we're being pushed in these exact same directions, where we see women resemble children more than men do, and therefore we see them as not threatening. We see them as deserving help and support and protection. We see them as harmless. We see them as benign. All of those things. When they throw a tantrum, or they express fear or unhappiness or whatever, we move to try and mitigate that, right? We have not just social forces pushing us in this direction, but we have physiological forces, sort of innate psychology that's also pushing us in these same directions, right? It's the most horrible fucking thing. So yeah, no, it's like the double whammy. It's like we've got biology working against us as men's rights activists, and we've got social psychology working against us as men's rights activists. It's not fair. It's an unfair fight. It's completely unfair.
Well, the thing is that doesn't matter what's fair or unfair. It's a fight. It's just the fight, and it just needs to be fought, and that's the end of it. That's all you can really do. I mean, the realities are what they are, but that doesn't mean you stop. But the fact that this guy just fell into something old and comfortable, old habits die hard. And it's not surprising, especially since his men's rights activism seems to have been really superficial. Like it was based on one and 1/4 book. Like when I started studying this stuff, I read a whole bunch. Like there was a whole, like, I mean, compared to the feminist section, it was minuscule, but there was a whole like bookshelf full of books related to this topic, and I read them all. But he apparently has just read a book in a quarter. And then he stacked that book and a quarter up against an entire post-secondary degree in feminist political science, and then said, yeah, that book and a quarter just doesn't really stack up to this. Well, doesn't seem like a fair shake there. Banana?
Banana.
My focus is still on men. That much hasn't changed since my MRA days, but my work recognizes that the single most powerful set of tools for understanding the issues men face can be found in feminist analysis. I'm an idea.
Go back a bit. I think we missed a few of his words.
Okay.
Despite my best efforts, I'm an idealist, and I honestly, truly believe sociology can be an activist discipline. It can teach young people how our society constructs inequality, And once we start down that road, we can do something about it. There are some MRAs who claim men's rights is akin to feminism. But that's incorrect.
No. We don't.
No, you can have feminism, feminists. You can have it. Yeah.
Because I don't want to touch that shit. Yeah.
I've never heard an MRA say that the MRM is akin to feminism. It's something everyone else fucking says.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. When they deride feminism, they often say, feminists and men's rights activists, they're just the same thing, or men's rights advocates, they're just peas in a pod. Because there's a lot of people who fucking hate feminism now.
It's two sides of the same
we're
coin.
the same as them, but bad. You know. They say we have all the same arguments as them, except they don't count for us because men aren't oppressed. And then they conveniently forget that they have all those arguments as well when we point out how stupid they sound.
Okay, banana.
All right.
The men's rights movement has always been anti-feminist first, men's issues second.
Wait. Does he realize that the anti-feminist community is like upset that they call them men's rights advocates?
Yes.
No, I guess not. I guess he doesn't really give a shit. But yeah, they don't particularly like it when they get called men's rights advocates, because there is a big distinction. In many ways, let's just put it this way. It's really difficult to not be anti-feminist when you advocate for men, because feminism is polluting the world with some pretty hateful shit directed at men. Like the idea that men are more likely to be rapists than rape victims. That men showing ads with little boys and entitling it, your son will grow up to be a domestic abuser. Like, and then other ads where they have a male face and it says, name the problem underneath. Yeah, this is pretty hateful shit towards men. So you got this entire propaganda campaign against men. It's hard to be pro-man and not to say things like, hey, maybe implying that all men are rapists, not a good thing. Maybe ignoring the fact or trying to minimize or hide the fact that men can be rape victims of women, not a good thing. I mean, these are things that feminists do. I mean, maybe we'll become not anti-feminist when feminist stops being anti-male and doesn't do things like create hashtags like kill all men.
Yeah, but I don't think that day is ever going to happen, because the entire basis of feminism is patriarchy theory, which posits that any system in which men have most of the overt power, in politics or whatever, is necessarily and definitionally unjust and oppresses women. And it doesn't matter how well those politicians serve the female constituency. It doesn't matter how much care that those male politicians provide for women. It doesn't matter whether the panel of men deciding about abortion rights is Jon Stewart and Al Franken and Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, who are all pro-choice. And the panel of women would be Michelle Bachmann and Sarah Palin and frickin' Ann Coulter and some other pro-life woman, right? No. The very fact that it's men making those decisions, even if they're making feminist decisions, right, is still unjust. It's unjust, right? Because men couldn't possibly represent the female perspective. Men couldn't possibly understand female concerns. Men couldn't possibly care about women to the extent that they would prioritize their interests, right? Even though every single fucking piece of evidence that we see shows that men are just as capable of women of doing that. And that it's women who are less capable of considering the other fucking side of the equation. It is women who are less capable of considering men's interests than their own. Fucking hell. Fucking how are they going to become anti-male when their entire fucking premise, the axioms by which they view the world, right, are all based on the idea that men are vile, that men are
Well, or that
men have no empathy or concern for women,
or that society should be judged solely on its effect on women. That in and of itself is also an anti-male sentiment, because there's no society which just ignores its effect on one group that isn't pretty much anti that group in some way. Maybe they're just indifferent to that group, but it's not generally. If you completely ignore that, society decides it doesn't have to care about a group of people that constitute that society. It's not a good thing towards that group. But let's banana, because we're in the home stretch. We're in the home stretch.
It never ceases to amaze me when I'm arguing with a man, often a feminist man, and I'll say men deserve this right, and I'll say no, they don't. Men make up most of the government, and so no man would ever say that men don't deserve those rights. You're a fucking man, bruv. You just said it. And the douchebags in the government fucking agree with you. And round we go. Anyway, yes, banana.
Every time I look back at the men's rights movement, all I see is negativity, rage, hate, bitterness, and fear. But I don't feel ashamed of my time in it. I don't even know that I regret it. Because without it, I might not have ended up where I am now. It turned me on to the study of men and eventually to feminism.
The study of men as being the problem, and feminism as being salvation, I guess.
Yeah. Oh well, good luck with you. I mean, your life is going to be a hell of a lot easier. I mean, as long as they decide they want to keep you around.
Yeah, hopefully you won't end up being like Charles Clymer or Hugo Schweitzer or, any of those other men that they've thrown under the bus because, they fit the bill for a while, but then,
No longer good. Mike, is that the end of it?
There's one more little bit at the end.
Okay.
I've been dating the same woman since 2004. And oh God, I must have gotten on her nerves back then.
Wow, okay.
that is...
Well,
that is
just an allusion to women's power.
Yeah, no, but that whole, he must have gotten on her nerves back then, and that's the most important thing.
Yep. That's the most important thing. And it's an allusion to women's power, too.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Let's wind this sucker down. It's like, what do you say to that? Like, you know what he's trying to do? He's trying to. I don't believe that he'd act. I mean, maybe he's being completely honest that, after reading 1.5 books or 1.25 books, he went full men's rights advocate or activist. Although apparently he did no activism, but he was he called himself an egalitarian. But this is the story of someone who was deprogrammed from 1.5 books that he read about men's rights by taking an entire post-secondary master's degree in feminist sociology. Oh, and also a doctorate.
Yeah.
Oh, well, men's rights must be pretty powerful if that's how much it takes to deprogram someone.
Yeah.
It wasn't even just 2 books of feminism to deprogram. It took him an entire master's degree and a PhD to deprogram him. And a doctorate to deprogram him from 1.25 books of men's rights.
Yeah.
If this is even true. It all sounds like it could be some junk made up for a story,
Well, I mean, honestly, you look at how many men come into the men's rights subreddit, and they say, I used to be a feminist, but, right? Even look at how many people email me, right? And I probably get maybe one every 2 weeks or so since I started. who says, I used to consider myself a feminist, but now I don't, right? You know, and some of them are like, say that they really drank the Kool-Aid. They really, really did. That they were dyed-in-the-wool feminists. They were 100%, you know, on board with patriarchy theory and rape culture and systemic gendered violence against women and all of this other stuff, right? And now they are not. And it was, you know, they found me, and they moved on to, you know, maybe Sargon and Alison and, you know, and the doctor, or, you
well,
know.
usually it's Honey Badger Radio, not to me. I'm a really
Yeah,
dark, deep well.
There are actually a lot of people who tell me that they found me first and then they found your channel, and they found some of the really excellent videos that you did, Son of Threat narrative, the magnets one, the puzzle pieces one, right? Like the ones that are just so beautifully put together. You know, and they said, like, so literally a waitress with a high school diploma and a woman living in Saskatchewan with a degree in frickin'
Environmental design.
that's it. You know, like, so nothing to do with sociology, nothing to do with political science, nothing to do with any of anthropology or anything like that, right? No training whatsoever, and somehow watching a handful of videos, right, presenting the other side of the story, and they dropped feminism and all of its doctrines, and they're maybe not men's rights activists, but they are, you know, I no longer call myself a feminist, right? And I should probably forward those on to you whenever they mention you, just to make you feel good, but I'm lazy, so I don't tend to do that. But there are people specifically mention you, and specifically mention the doctor, and specifically mention Teal Deer and Sargon and all kinds of other anti-feminist bloggers or feminist critical bloggers, vloggers rather. But that's all it takes, right, to deprogram a feminist and bring them over, and, you know, we just have to present the other side of the story in an open forum.
Yeah, just a strong breeze. That's it.
Yeah, we don't have to freaking stick you in a fucking classroom
for like 6 years.
For 6 hours a day for like 4 years or whatever, right? Reading nothing but feminist propaganda. Oh,
you're getting stink eye every day if you disagree.
Yeah,
a single iota.
Yeah, then you learn what's what, apparently. So yeah, no, I'm sorry, but if we're actually going to go into how many people get converted from one side to the other, I think that we've got feminism beat. I really do. And we don't have a captive audience when we do this.
No, we don't have a captive audience. We don't have the authority of a university setting and titles and letters behind our name that actually relate to the subject. All we got is this YouTube channel, our voices, and the hamsters in our brain that squeak, squeak, squeak. I guess that's a hamster wheel thing, but I mean, like moving the thoughts around, like, you know.
I don't actually have a hamster in there. I actually have a rat.
Okay, you have a rat. I think I have voles. I have Saskatchewan internet voles in my brain.
Yes.
All right.
Penguins.
God only knows what Mike has. Some kind of pink thing with a big head.
Penguins, he said.
It's penguins today. I can fit penguins in my head.
That's nice. A little
It
disturbing.
is. It really is.
Are they small penguins or are they full-size penguins?
No, they're massive, massive penguins in my head, Alison.
What's black, white, and red?
Dead penguin.
A penguin falling down the stairs. Yeah.
Okay. Let's I'll do the shilling, and then let's do this. Okay. All right, when I went to the first ICMI, the International Conference for Men's Issues, there was something that I noticed. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It was, well, I know Karen went. It was right by the beach. It was actually quite nice. Um, but what I noticed is that everyone there, except for Karen, wasn't smoking. They were vaping. They were using these little electronic cigarettes that I had never seen before in my entire life. And not just one person, but nearly all of them were, at least all the smokers. And this was right before the vaping craze seemed to hit big. So I was looking at all of these people standing around on the beach with these vapes, and I was thinking, what the fuck am I seeing? And then it dawned on me.
Early adopters.
This is a population of first adopters. Not just early adopters, first adopters. I went home and I cogitated upon that because it really struck me, and I realized this. If you're a part of this group, if you're invested in these concepts as a listening colleague to this radio show, you are part of the population of first adopters. And you may look at the other side and see how many views, how many hits, how many people, and you may be disheartened and think that you do not matter. But let me tell you, numbers may be on their side, but history is on our side. Because nothing was ever changed by doing the same thing over and over again except louder and with more people. However, everything changes when you do something different. And what we're doing is something very, very different. Now, when I started to shill, or I started to try to get people to invest in Honey Badger Radio, I went through a long period of time in which I tried to figure out how to convince people, what was stopping you guys, and I only got little hints and glimpses of the true answer here and there, until I received a letter recently in which the writer explained that he had to overcome the sense of inadequacy in order to become a patron, his sense that whatever he did couldn't matter. I now know, or I got an idea, what's stopping you. What's stopping you isn't indifference, isn't apathy, isn't your skepticism for men's issues. You obviously are already invested in the concept because you listen to it and you think about it. What's stopping you is your belief that you don't matter. What you do doesn't matter. That putting in $1, $5, $25 doesn't matter. But it does. Here's the thing. I don't know when lightning will strike this concept and will set society on fire with the ideas that we talk about. I don't know when that will happen, but what I do know is that even a small market can sustain a business for centuries. So if you don't think that $1, that $5, that $25 doesn't matter, it absolutely does. Without it, without your investment, no matter how small, there is no market and that business isn't sustained. I don't know when the lightning will come around, but I do know if there's nothing there to catch fire, if no one has built the tinder up and kept it dry, if there isn't the business, the market, the community carefully tended and waiting, it'll just hit and do nothing but burn some dirt. You are vital, and don't succumb to this belief that you are irrelevant because you're not. You are a first adopter, and potentially a first investor in a new market, and all that we need to do to keep that market alive, to keep that business alive, and eventually lightning will strike. Because history is on our side. Time is on our side. It's on our side. Because if there's one constant of the human race, it's change. And change doesn't come about by doing the same thing but louder, with more people, and with a bigger platform. It comes about by doing something different. And we're something different. That $1 you think means nothing, you're a first adopter. Multiply that $1 by a factor of 1,000, and you're starting to get the kind of power that you wield as a first adopter in terms of change. Because there's money, and then there's money put towards change. And every dollar from a first adopter might as well be 1,000. If you're putting $1 in, you're putting 1,000 in. 5,000. 25 grand. Because you are a first adopter, and thus your money is worth more in the marketplace of change. Far more in the marketplace of change. So imagine you're taking your $5 and imagine you're actually donating 5,000. Do you still feel like what you're doing is meaningless now? www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. Thank you.